What's up, guys? Let's take a look at another CodeWars exercise. This one's called extract the domain name from a URL. We're going to get a string representing a web address, and we're going to return just the domain taken out of that string. So for example, sometimes it's the second thing after an HTTP. Sometimes it's the third thing after an HTTP with a www. Sometimes it's the third thing in a different way with an HTTPS. And sometimes it's the very first thing if you just say google.com, for example. We can't count backwards from the end either, because after the domain might be a .com or a .org or a .co.uk, and there may be slashes with a path and a file at the end too, so we have no idea what's coming after. Well, we do have some idea. It's just that there are a lot of possibilities. So how can we handle all those possibilities and encompass all the different patterns without saying if 100 times? Well, the way I'm going to do it, and the reason I wanted to make this video, is the match case syntax in Python, which is something I've just been looking into recently, and I think it's pretty cool. So let's give it a shot. First, let's look at the old, ugly, horrible way I did this in the past. One of the great benefits of CodeWars is you can click on past solutions and go, wow, what kind of idiot wrote that? So what I did when I did this maybe a month ago was find the index of every slash, find the index of every dot, and then do a bunch of tricky stuff to figure out, do I start after some slashes or maybe after a dot? And do I end after the first dot or maybe the second one? That would be a nightmare to read if I gave this to somebody. And you know what? It's not great for the computer either. I'm sure the computer would take more time and more memory doing it this way than some better way. So let's do some better way. And here's one I did earlier today, which is not very short, but I think it's very beautiful. So let's give it a shot. The match case in Python could just be an if-else, but that's really boring. The better thing is you can give it different shapes and say, does this fit this shape? If so, we're going to use the parts. Now, unfortunately, you can't do that on a string, but we can do it with the list, so we're going to make a list. So I'm going to start by getting all the little parts by saying, okay, url.replace the double slash with a dot, and the single slash with a dot, and then we go dot split on the dot. And what that means is we're going to get all the little parts, like I was saying earlier, the parts, the HTTP and the www and the whatever. And now these are in a list, and now we can use match case on them to say, hey, does this fit a certain pattern? So one of the patterns would be, what if we have HTTP or HTTPS, and the little bar, the little pipe means or, then a www. This is going to be like the longest one. Then a domain, then the rest. I really love how you can name these in here and then use them in the case. It's kind of like unpacking with the tuple, but it allows for a little bit more exploration. Like, hey, let's try to unpack this and see what happens. In this case, we would return the domain. And if I hit test, I'm going to see if that works for any of them. Well, it turns out it did work for one of them, the one that was this long boy that had HTTP and www and then the domain. Okay, so what's another case? Well, how about the one with all that and no www? That's like this one, where it has one of the HTTPs and then the domain and then the rest. Okay, rest is not a keyword or anything. It's just a standard way to say the rest of whatever's out there, which could be nothing or it could be a lot. If you were talking about a URL specifically, you'd probably call it path, and that would make sense here too. So now let's hit test and see. We should get more than one of them. Hey, we got almost all of them, so that's apparently the most common in the tests. But what if it's the other way around and they have the www but not the HTTP? So then, hey, we're getting somewhere, right? And what if they have neither and they have just the domain and the rest, like the google.com. Okay, well in that case, boom, we've covered all the possibilities. And if I move this, you'll see it because my webcam's in the way. These are all the possibilities. It's definitely a bit longer, but once you write it this way, it gives you the power of thinking about it. Now that I've given things names and I've laid them out visually, now I can see, well, hang on, there's a much nicer way to do this. There's a much quicker way to do this, which is just cut out the HTTP, cut out the www. You know, we could add those to the replace at the beginning, and then we've got the domain and the rest, no matter what. So I could go replace, replace. In fact, that is what I did for one of my solutions right here, and that works great. However, I do love the match case to show the shape of your solution, and this is something we might use in the future when we're doing more complicated patterns, to say, hey Python, does this fit this certain shape? You know, like if we're looking for an email, does it have some stuff and an @ and then some other stuff and then .com or whatever? Of course, you can use regex for this, regular expressions, and if we look at the solutions, we're going to see some people start with import RE, which is perfect for strings, but of course we might not always be working with strings. Let's take a look at the solutions from other people, because we often find cool ideas in there. Let's say they just do split a bunch and they take out the stuff that matters, and then the real key is that they're using their indexing inside of these and taking like the last one and making a lot of clever decisions. That's pretty cool. It's not super readable, like if I saw that I wouldn't necessarily know what's going on at first, but it's impressive that they were able to do that in a line, in a pretty short line too. These guys are using RE, regular expression, to say, hey, this thing might be there, this thing might be there, then here's the thing we're looking for, then there might be other stuff. And so this is a similar kind of pattern matching. RE is just for strings, but it does a great job. I don't know all the details, and I wouldn't be able to type this up without a little help, but I should learn them, right? Here's one that does a bunch of replacing and then finds the dot and goes from there. Pretty cool. I don't think you'll see a lot of match case, because on CodeWars a lot of these problems have been around for a few years, and match case was only introduced recently, so the guys who did it a few years ago wouldn't have even had the chance to use it. They would have used other things. But if you're scrolling down here in the future, you'll eventually see mine with the match case, and maybe that'll catch on and other people will follow suit. But anyway, I really love this problem because, well, A, it's real. It's a real thing that you might have to do, getting these strings. But B, it was a good opportunity for me to learn how to do match case. I learned using the little bar, the little pipe for the OR. I learned giving things names and using the asterisk for however many things you have at the end, which could be none or one or a lot. I used the proper ordering, like this wouldn't necessarily work if I put them in a different order, and I had to make them into a list first because it doesn't work on strings. So doing things like this is very educational. Even if you open it up and you say, oh man, some of these guys are doing it in one line, learning the match case is definitely going to help me in the future, and I think it might help you in the future if you have an eye for it. If you look for circumstances where we've got a piece of data that can be certain shapes, and we want to catch certain ones and use them, and then catch other ones and use them in a slightly different way. So let's keep an eye for that in the future, especially when we're given structured input that's like some weird dictionary or some weird tuple, and we have to find the good stuff. Who knows? Might be fun.